He was born into a world that judged him before he even had a chance to live. A label was stitched to his name like a brand, dangerous, unpredictable, not to be trusted. The word pitbull echoed through the corridors of fear in human hearts, and by 8 months old, Jet had already survived what most dogs never would. He wasn't born into love. He was born into noise, into chaos, into the back corner of a yard where his bark grew louder because no one ever listened. Neighbors complained. "He won't stop," they said. Animal control responded, "Too loud, too wild." A vet's report simply read, "Healthy but high risk." That was all it took. A few words to send him spiraling into the shadows of the world. They brought him to a cold shelter at the edge of northern Wisconsin, where fall wrapped the land in golden leaves while the air bit through fur and steel. Inside that cement prison, Jet became a case number. Another intake, another problem to manage. Behind thick metal bars, he paced and paced, clockwise, then counterclockwise, barking until his throat turned raw. And when hands reached in too, quickly he snapped, not out of hatred, but survival. They marked his tag, "Do not approach." And so they didn't. They passed his cage like he was a ghost. But Jet wasn't a ghost. He was a soul starved of gentleness. His bark was not a threat. It was a prayer, a cry. "Please see me." But they couldn't, they wouldn't, for the soul of every living thing is in the hand of God, and the breath of all mankind. At night, when the barking ceased and silence haunted the halls like fog, Jet remained awake, ears twitching. At every whisper of wind through vents, every distant howl. He didn't dream, he waited. For what, he wasn't sure. Trust? Hope? Love? Words he had never been taught. Then one morning, a change, not loud, not sudden, but quiet. Subtle, a small carrier rolled past the back gate. Inside it, nestled behind black mesh, were amber eyes, wide, unblinking. A baby bobcat, barely 3 months old, alone, her name was Sage. They found her curled in the shadow of her mother's body. A poacher's bullet had stolen the adult's breath, but somehow Sage had survived. Too wild to be placed with a foster, too fragile to release. So they brought her here, but there was no soft place to put her. No comforting space for a creature so untamed. The only quiet kennel left was beside Jet. Some said it was a mistake, but fate doesn't make mistakes. As Sage was gently lowered into her enclosure, Jet stopped mid-pace. He turned. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply watched. And, Sage watched back. It was as if the air thickened between them, two broken beings staring through the steel that separated their stories. And for the first time, no one moved. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. It began slowly, like fog lifting from the forest floor. Jet, once frantic, now paused each time she moved. And Sage, once skittish, blinked slowly when he paced. A silent language began to form. Glances became greetings. Movements became messages. Then one afternoon, Sage did something no human dared. She approached. No sound, no hiss. Just soft paw steps across concrete. Jet froze. No bark, no snarl. He stepped forward, muzzle pressed gently to the mesh. One breath, one heartbeat, and then they touched. Cold steel between them, but something warmer rose from the stillness. For the first time since Jet arrived, he wagged his tail, not wildly, not in panic, but slow, controlled, gentle. The shelter staff watched in stunned silence. What was this? An accident? A risk? Or was it a miracle born in metal cages? Jet didn't bark that night. Instead, he lay by the fence, ears tilted toward Sage, as if her presence steadied the storms inside him. Two are better than one, for if one falls, the other can lift them up. 3 days later, handlers decided to give Sage a short walk in the enclosed courtyard. Still too young to wander far, her world was small, fences and leaf-littered paths. But she didn't explore. She didn't chase butterflies or sniff the air like other wildlings. She walked straight to Jet's kennel, sat, waited, as if she knew. As if he was her compass. Jet didn't bark, didn't pace. He simply lay there, head resting on folded paws, watching her. For an hour neither moved, not when a squirrel darted past, not when a door slammed in the distance. And again the staff stood witness to something sacred. The dog they warned others about was still silent, steady for her. The wild bobcat no one could touch, now sitting beside a pit bull no one dared trust. It didn't make sense. But sometimes the wild write stories beyond understanding. Stories where pain meets pain and finds peace. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you, not as the world gives. The next morning, the team made a choice. 2 gates opened, one for Jet, one for Sage. For a moment no one breathed. Sage moved first, calm, deliberate, unafraid. She walked straight to him, sat down, placed one small paw gently over his. Jet blinked, lowered his head, and stayed. The air didn't explode with tension, no growl, no flinch. Only stillness. Then movement, a slow rhythm like learning to dance. She pounced lightly, he rolled gently. He barked once, soft, unsure, as she flicked her ears, unbothered. Together they played. Not rough, not chaotic, like souls reacquainting. Boundaries tested, then softened. 2 creatures built by fear, now dismantling it piece by piece. And the shelter, once a symphony of barking, now hushed itself to watch. Every morning, Sage trotted out first, tail held high, but she always looked back. And Jet, he was always following, quiet now, balanced, gentle, changed, the loudest dog, and the wildest cat, moving like echoes of one another. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Let the world say what it will, dangerous, unpredictable, broken. But here, in a corner of northern Wisconsin, a pit bull once feared and a bobcat once orphaned rewrote the language of healing. They didn't need words, they didn't need understanding, they only needed each other. Jet, once the embodiment of chaos, now lived in rhythm with a wild heart not his own. Sage, once silent with sorrow, now purred against the warm strength of the dog she chose. Every footstep they took together was a testament, not just to survival, but to salvation. Not just to rescue, but to rebirth. And to the staff, the volunteers, and the world watching through steel bars and glass windows, their bond whispered something holy, that even the wildest things can love, that even the most wounded can trust, that even in the coldest places, light finds a way to enter, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Jet had never known how to be gentle. His world had taught him how to bark, how to pace, how to brace for rejection. But Sage, with her low crouch and silent pause, taught him something else. He began to mimic her, not by command, but by instinct. She pounced, and he followed. She crept through leaves like a whisper, and Jet, once clumsy with muscle and noise, tried to mirror her grace. He would leap from flat rocks and tumble into the dirt, but instead of snapping in frustration, he'd look up, and she'd be there, waiting, watching, and then, softly, with the weight of feathers, she'd pounce on his back, her touch more of a nudge than a strike, as if saying, "Try again." Slowly, their worlds overlapped. Sage began to eat from his bowl without asking. And Jet, the pit bull labeled food aggressive, let her. No growl, no posture, just a silent wag of his tail and an open heart. Staff members stared in disbelief, the once untouchable bobcat and the once dangerous pit bull now moving together as if born into the same heartbeat. One handler whispered through tears, "They breathe the same way now." 2 hearts aligned. In rhythm are not bound by species, they are bound by soul. Then came the school visits. Small groups of children, wide-eyed and giggling, were brought in to learn about animal welfare, the silent lessons only the broken could teach. One girl, no older than 7, pointed at the pair and laughed, "He's like a cat." And Jet, hearing her joy, spun in a half-circle and dropped into a perfect play ball beside Sage. The children erupted in laughter, clapping with joy. But the staff didn't just see a funny moment, they saw transformation. Jet wasn't becoming more dangerous, he was becoming more gentle. By imitating a wild creature, he had learned how to slow his heart, how to trust, how to be safe, not just for others, but for himself. Behind closed doors, however, conversations began to shift. "They're too attached," one volunteer whispered. "They follow each other everywhere. What happens if his instincts kick in?" Jet was still a pit bull, a breed painted with fear, and Sage, still a wild animal marked by tragedy. What if this connection, as beautiful as it seemed, became a tragedy waiting to happen? Quietly, the question became action. Separate them, just for a few days. See what happens. Fear often hides behind caution, but love always stands. Through the test. That same afternoon, while Jet played in the courtyard, Sage was led gently into an indoor enclosure for a routine checkup. She didn't return, and Jet, he knew. The gate stayed shut. Her scent faded from the air. And he began to pace, not with energy but with anguish. A low whine escaped his throat, thin and sharp like a question unanswered. Then he barked, once, again, each cry louder, raspier, more desperate until his voice cracked from exhaustion. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't rest. He stared at the door as if willing it open with his soul. In another room, Sage lay curled, her body twitching with every sound. She heard him, the muffled echoes of his pain, and she could not reach him. No hissing, no pacing. Only quiet heartbreak. They weren't angry. They weren't violent. They were grieving in the only language animals know. It wasn't instinct. It was love. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Then something worse. During a morning stretch in her enclosure, Sage tried to leap onto a wooden beam, the kind she used to climb with ease, but her paws slipped. She twisted mid-air and hit the ground with a soft, haunting whimper. The vet's voice was calm but concerned. "It's a sprain, muscle bruising, minor joint twist, not dangerous. But she's in pain." And so Sage was moved into medical. Isolation, not for behavior, for healing. There she curled into herself, eyes half closed, releasing soft cries that echoed through the hall like a child sobbing in the night. Jet couldn't see her, but he heard everything, every whimper, every footstep, every whispered concern from staff. "She's not eating. She hasn't stood up. She cries when she moves." And somehow, without ever hearing her, name spoken aloud, Jet understood. He pressed his body against the gate that led toward her. He whimpered, not demanding, just calling. On his daily walks, he pulled toward her side of the building. He didn't bark, he didn't rebel, he simply waited. For 2 days, in silence. With devotion stronger than chains. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. On the third morning, the staff made a decision. Sage, they believed, would recover better in familiar surroundings. Gently, they returned her to her old enclosure, now lined with soft bedding and sunlight. Jet stood the moment he heard her scent. Return. He walked to the edge of his kennel, slow, deliberate, pausing just inches from the barrier. Sage didn't move at first. But then she turned, their eyes met, he leaned in. And with all the tenderness the world once believed he lacked. Jet licked the side of her face, not in greeting, in welcome. He had not forgotten, he had not blamed her. He had simply waited. And when she leaned into the mesh, sighing into his breath, the staff behind the glass windows wept openly. This was no accident. This was love written in fur and breath and stillness, the righteous care for the needs of their animals. But the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. Weeks passed. Sage regained her strength. And just as the quiet returned to the shelter's walls, the phone rang. A wildlife rehabilitation center several states away had followed Sage's journey since her rescue. They were ready to offer her a permanent place, a protected forest reserve, specially designed for creatures like her, too wild to be pets, too scarred to return fully to the wild. There was only one condition. The transition had to be gentle. Safe, surrounded by companions she trusted. Does she have one? The rehab center asked. And the staff didn't hesitate. Yes, she had Jet, suggesting it sparked fear. He's not a bobcat, someone muttered. What if he doesn't adjust? What if he forgets how to be gentle? But Sage had already made her choice. Each morning she sought Jet, each evening she rested beside him. When humans approached, she bristled. When Jet approached, she softened. The records were clear. Her healing accelerated in his presence. She trusted no one more. And so the staff said, yes, perfect love casts out fear. The reserve was nothing like the shelter. It stretched wide beneath an open sky, the sun dancing on fields of wild grass. Dense trees whispered with birdsong. Boulders warmed in the light, and in the center was a still lake that mirrored the clouds. Sage stepped into this world cautiously. Each scent new, each sound strange. She could have hidden. She could have frozen, but she didn't have to be brave alone. Jet was there, quiet, steady, always just a few steps behind. He didn't bark, he didn't push. When she hesitated, he stepped first. Nose low, ears forward, silently saying, it's safe. I'll go first. And in this land of second chances, the wild found its own rhythm again, not in instincts or training, but in the heartbeat of a dog and a bobcat who chose each other. Again and again, through every shadow, every doubt, every gate, for even the wilderness rejoices when love takes root. Jet was no longer just her playmate. He had become something more sacred. A guardian, a sentry. A silent protector who walked not beside, but just behind her, close enough to catch her if she stumbled, but wise enough to let her lead. The volunteers at the Wildlife Reserve watched from the shade of the observation hut, their voices hushed with reverence. We've worked with dozens of animals, one said, eyes locked on the unlikely pair moving through the tall grass. But we've never seen anything like this. Another added softly, this isn't obedience. It's something else. Something deeper, older, like they know something we don't. Sage, the wild bobcat once fragile, limping, and scared, had changed. Her limp disappeared, her muscles grew lean. Her movements became swift and deliberate. She leapt with precision now, climbed higher, and sprinted through forest corridors like a spirit born from the soil. The forest was calling her home, and she had begun to answer, there is a time to hold close, and a time to let go, and both are love. At first, she would vanish into the trees for just an hour, then two, then a full afternoon. Yet never chased her, never panicked. He waited, still and silent, by the edge of the lake where her reflection once danced beside his. His ears twitched at every sound. His nose lifted toward the trail she favored. And as the golden sunlight bled through the canopy, Sage always returned, always, until one day she didn't, not by sunset, not even the next morning. The forest had called her fully now, not as a guest, but as one of its own. Her instincts had awakened. She was no longer the trembling cub cradled in crates and warmed by heat lamps. She was whole, fierce, wild, free, and Jet understood. The volunteers, holding their breath, expected whining, pacing, barking, but Jet did none of these. He walked the path she once took, sat beneath the trees she loved, and gazed into the wilderness she now called home. He had given her the gift of becoming, and in return she had given him the same. They had healed each other, soul to soul, not through words but through presence. Love is not about holding on. Sometimes love is the strength to set someone free. When Sage was finally strong enough to live fully on her own, Jet returned to the shelter, the place where his life had once been written off with a label. But he didn't walk in the same way he had left. Gone was the frantic pacing. Gone were the raw barks and the anxious eyes. Now Jet moved with quiet confidence, with gentle intention. He didn't push forward, he didn't flinch. The volunteers, once cautious, once afraid, now approached him with something else in their eyes, respect. And awe. He no longer reacted to sudden noise. He no longer bristled at unfamiliar hands. Instead he listened. He waited. And when someone reached out to him, he responded not with suspicion, but with grace. The language Sage had taught him, the silent trust between wild and wounded, had become his own. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind and heart. And then something beautiful began. New dogs arrived. Dogs trembling, shrinking into corners. Dogs marked with the same labels Jet had once carried. Too reactive, too broken, too wild. But Jet didn't turn away. He didn't bark or dominate. He simply sat outside their enclosures, quietly, patiently. A wag of his tail, a tilt of his head, a soft breath. An invitation? One by one they responded, they inched forward. They sniffed, they stopped trembling. Because something in Jet whispered safety, a message louder than training, deeper than commands. I know what it's like. You're safe now, the staff watched, stunned. Jet was doing what no protocol could, what no handler had taught him. He was helping not by force, but by being who he had become. By being the very thing no one had believed he could be. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. So they gave him a new role. Jet was no longer just another dog waiting behind a gate. He became a mentor. A guide, a quiet therapist for the voiceless. Today, Jet is a central figure in the shelter's emotional socialization program. When new arrivals come, wide-eyed, snarling, hiding from the world, Jet is there, not to dominate, not to lead, but to be. He walks with them. He lies near them. He shows them, with every movement, not all hands hurt. Not all cages stay locked. And not all futures are dark. His presence is medicine, subtle, steady, sacred. Families began to notice. Visitors came asking for him. We saw his story. We want to adopt him. But Jet? Jet had already chosen his home. Some are called not to be taken, but to stand, to remain, and to guide others through the storm. He stayed, not because no one wanted him, but because he wanted to stay. For the frightened pups, for the misread souls, for the ones marked as too much, just like he had been. Because Jet understood now he didn't need to be feared. He didn't need to fight for space. He didn't need to prove his worth. He had helped Sage return to the wild. He had returned from the edge of fear. And now he was helping others find their way back, one quiet presence at a time. Jet had been born with a label, dangerous, unpredictable, and Sage, the untouchable wild. But love had rewritten both of their stories. Jet didn't become a predator, he became a friend, a healer, a light. The Spirit of the Lord has anointed me to bind up the broken-hearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives. Jet and Sage were never meant to meet, a misunderstood pitbull, discarded for being too much, and a wild bobcat orphaned by cruelty. Yet, in a world that tried to keep them caged by fear, they found each other, and became each other's freedom. Their bond wasn't a coincidence, it was a calling. One soul bruised by noise, the other by silence, healing not with medicine, but with trust. And in each other they discovered the most powerful truth. Love doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence. In the quiet moments, where a wild heart touched a trembling one, where fur pressed to fur across steel bars, something holy was born, not just rescue, not just survival, but rebirth. And now, Jet, once the dog no one dared to touch, leads others into light with the same stillness Sage once gave him. This isn't just a touching animal story. This is a reminder that love, when given the smallest crack of light, will grow through anything, fences, fear, even the wild itself. And the wild shall lie down with the tame, and peace shall pass between them. Their story didn't just change their lives. It changed ours, and maybe, just maybe, it was never Jet who needed saving. Maybe Jet was sent to save us.